Hello everyone, welcome back to another GSL qualifying match. In the top left we have returning player SoS, and in the bottom right, still I would call a returning player soO. I think soO has been back in StarCraft 2 longer than SoS, but then soO actually has not been committing 100% to StarCraft 2. Actually playing a decent amount of Brood War as well, I believe. Unless I'm totally making this up, but I'm pretty sure. And actually, I think there was a bit of a question mark as to whether or not he was continuing to play StarCraft 2, but clearly trying out in this GSL qualifier. This is the round 1 lower bracket qualifying match. There we go. So SoS narrowly almost making it through the upper bracket, but losing 0-2 to Solar, which I think most people would expect. Solar's a pretty big favorite to even get into the finals of a GSL. Semifinals for sure, finals a little bit more questionable, but still. And then now having a second chance in this round 1, if SoS or soO were to lose today, one of them has to, then they have a second chance in round 2, which is also a double elimination bracket. So plenty of chances for them to still make it on through. Do I expect either one to make it through compared to some of the other names that still have not? I'm not so sure. For instance, Creator actually did get defeated by soO in this bracket, which is a little surprising. But Creator kind of supposed to get through as well, actually, I would say. And then, TY, another returnee, has a good chance, I would suspect, of making it through. And then a couple other names that some of them we've already cast, actually. So like Estrella, for instance, or Hero. Stats, another returning player who could also have an equally good chance to make it through, so on and so forth. So anyway, the point is, I'm not sure if I expect either one to make it through, but with the pool of players in Korea, there's actually a pretty decent chance. Unfortunately, it is just the case that there's not a lot of new blood, not any threatening new blood in StarCraft 2, in Korea specifically. So good for some of the older guys. Not great for the entirety of the scene. And speaking of which, if you do want to support the scene, you want to support your favorite players, many of whom have been entertaining you for over a decade, then patreon.com/GSL for this particular endeavor. They are accepting crowdfunding and they are giving it all to the players. We also have such endeavors as the Korean StarCraft League, also having a Patreon, Wardy's Korean Battles, I believe also had some crowdfunding, so on and so forth. So definitely need of your support. But though that spiel aside, so we have SoS, obviously a very tricky player, one of the trickiest trickers that ever tricked. Hit the proxy nexus shenanigans, as is one of his last matches before going off the military. Finally comes back, and I do suspect him to be as tricky as he used to be, right? So it's going to be up to soO. I don't know, two S name is going to confuse me. It's going to be up to soO to actually handle this. Now, if soO handles any of the early game trickery that SoS can throw at him, then we know soO as a very good Roach player, which maybe sounds like I'm joking, but he's definitely had some victories based off his ability to overcome challenges in the early game and then bust out a billion roaches and win in the mid game. A bit of a roachy boy, as Maynard would say. Not totally familiar with the concept of a hive. Just kidding. But he does massively prefer that mid game. So, I mean, in the kind of the opposite, right? SoS is going to want to make sure to hamper soO or try and straight up kill him before he gets to that point, to that macro machine. And SoS is opening up with some good old-fashioned resonating glyphs, something that he's obviously very familiar with. As far as the new meta of the matchup, we do have the option of going into Mass Gateway, Blink Stalker, Charge Lot, the hero style that has emerged while SoS was still in military. But that's also kind of been over with. It's an option, but it's not something that I would say is necessarily in meta at this point. So SoS probably not having to jigger his style all that much, but there would be some things different. And I guess it's a question of whether or not both of them missed some moments and so have like an equal approach back into StarCraft 2, you know what I mean? Like, did they both go to military around the same time? Around the same time, yes, but as I said, I think soO came back earlier, so I'd have to really look deep in to see what metas have happened in the particular amount of time. But anyway, the Adepts are coming in here. This time with the Warp Prism, instant reinforcements going to be coming in, and soO has been pretty much caught by surprise. 41 drones is usually the point in which you want to start building an army, but you want to be building roaches, not pure Ling. The Lings do jump on top of the Adept shortly before the Shade activates, and the Shade has put them into the main base. soO forced to pull the drones. Does need to pull them even further, I would argue. The Adept's not shading, of course, as the Lings were chasing them. And there is still plenty of action in the main base. Now actually probably going to commit to the Shade. The Warp Prism in the main base, not going to move by the looks of things. Could threaten another Warp in there, as soO is just pulling left, right, and center. Oh no, the Warp Prism just flies over the Queens! Oh, I mean, that was just a straight up mistake, man. SoS. Yeah, not particularly good with the depths. Huh. Okay, then. The problem that I was trying to foresee was that the Adepts would be in the natural causing chaos, and then 4 more Adepts would get into the main, and that's kind of... that's what seems to sometimes do the most damage when it comes to these Adept rushes, is not the big ball of Adepts that are clearly being tracked by the Zerg, but rather the kind of 2 to 4 Adepts that slip into the other mineral lines. And then they cause the 10, 15, 20 drones of damage. But no, instead of using the Warp Prism to go over to the Adepts, I mean, that was clearly going to go over the Queens, which are reacting to the Adept Shades. That was just bad, unfortunately. So SoS, completely all in on that too, really. 2 bases, no third base. Is trying to get into some disruptors for a follow-up push, and the follow-up could still do some damage, of course, but soO managing to hold on to most of his drones, lost a lot of Lings in the process, but then building the drones as soon as he realized that he had things under control. So 55 drones, a great place to work off of. Only 1 disruptor, of course, in the Warp Prism is not the biggest of threats. Very unlikely to kill the number of units that SoS really needs to start bringing himself back into this game. And you could see that he thought about like actually combining the forces, but it would not work out. soO would be prepared. And in fact, soO even recognizing that he's not really being threatened adds on even more drones. Probably going to end there, especially since soO is only on 3 bases. He's got enough drones to saturate the minerals and the gas. For 5 out of 6. The Adepts come in now with the Disruptor, but there's even more Roaches on the field. Disruptor is going to get an okay... No, not really. Only killed the Queen. And like I said, soO realized there wasn't really a threat, and deals with this pretty much A-okay, even safeguarding the Lings that don't have to chase after the Adepts. The Adepts have to come to soO. They're the ones that need to do damage. The onus is on SoS. And SoS is just trying to buy some time here, trying to get his 3rd base up. Immortal and Colossus is now on the way. Something that's going to deal a lot better with potential counterattack that soO should be building up to, as we know soO as a mid-game player. Disruptor going to kill a couple of drones. Oh yeah, that was even splitting them back into the Disruptor, so that's the most drone kills so far. I think that was 5 additional ones. But is that enough? No, absolutely not. soO, 4th base on the way, replacing those drones lickety-split. Now should be just holding down the Roach button as soon as he's on supply blocked. soO is not necessarily the macro beast that we once knew him as. And even then had a couple of games where his mechanics weren't the most impressive, but... Yeah, okay, that's a little awkward. He should be busting out a bunch of Roaches at this point. Now forced to bust out all of his Overlords first and foremost. So... The good news is that SoS is pushing into soO as soO is getting on supply blocked. And soO is planning on building a lot of Roach Ravager. Actually, no, he's building a Devastation Pit. Maybe it's thinking that he's missed his timing here. He's going to say, okay, I'm not going to go for it. I'm just going to actually macro up. He can still get maxed out on Roach Ravager while doing this, especially with his economy now being really quite settled. 82 drones, 4 bases. This guy's actually playing late game. Who would have thunk it? But SoS doesn't actually push out. And I think that is better. Now, weirdly enough, I think the push-out would have worked, or been threatening, I should say. I don't know if it actually would have won, but it would have been kind of threatening, as soO was adding on all this macro. Rather boldly, I should say, but I guess the Lings did counterattack, distract, and if they did, they would have seen, unless he killed probes? No, like, if the Lings got over here, they saw the army respond to them, they also would have seen the lack of gas and the lack of probes, so you should know that it's an all-in on the way. I don't know if soO has actually picked up on this, not maxed out, and not going to be actually getting to Hive technology in time. SoS... yeah, it looks like this is gonna win. If I sound confused, it's kind of because I am. The ebb and flow of this particular ZVP, not perfect, but one that favors the Protoss. Slow Banelings trying to crash into Colossus do force a split, which makes some of the units more vulnerable, but the main units, the Colossus, are alive. A couple of sentries, Immortal still packing a punch. Stalkers without Blink, still doing that damage to the Roaches. And SoS able to still utilize the Colossus range to just bully, force soO to come to him. And soO, I feel like really misplayed this one. He clearly thought... It's really unfortunate, because if he had literally just gone for a maxed out mid-game attack, which he is really well known for, then he probably would have been prepared for this. There's always a struggle about the force fields and the Colossus beams, so you need to get the concave and so on, but like he absolutely could have tried to meet this even head on. You know, if he was actually maxed out, SoS would be the one first defending, and then soO would have been able to kind of track him the entire way while continuing to rebuild and trade out. Instead, SoS was able to catch a soO while building a supreme economy, not building up a maxed out army, and was able to kill third base. Didn't actually continue on, however. Now seeing as soO has another fourth base, putting him back on 4 bases, like that means that SoS did not do enough damage, because soO also has that hive finally done. SoS not feeling like he could push the issue right there might have missed his best opportunity to win this game, in which I would say overall, I did not expect him to win. So this is kind of realigning itself with my expectation, but in a very odd way. And now he knows that he needs to do that damage. Seeing that there is another fourth base, fully drones, and a hive in the main, he has to pull the trigger. He has to go for it. soO is demolishing his economy back at home, which SoS only really just built up. And soO is trying to hold on back at home. Where is that Viper to help out? I do not see it, and I do think it is necessary. 3 Colossus getting all this damage without taking any damage themselves. And the drones getting absolutely barbecued. Now soO still has a good economy with another fourth base being replaced. It's not necessarily game over for him, but he needs his army to actually be able to combat that of SoS's, and a Viper abducting a couple of Colossus would be huge. That Viper is still not entirely juiced up, however. Might get one abduct, might. +1 finishes for SoS after a really long time not having any upgrades, as well as Blink being done now. And I would say a couple of Stalkers blinking forward to sacrifice themselves for the kill on the Viper would actually be worth it. Oh, no. Geez. I think SoS back in the driver's seat, man. He's got 3 Colossus, an Immortal, and a Disruptor, and now upgraded Blink Stalkers. Way better of an army than the previous fight. Disruptor is then pushed onto the front lines a little bit awkwardly, so that's not very effective, but still, 3 Colossus make that 2 as the Viper finally comes into play. But I feel like the Colossus have already done their job. Another Colossus gets pulled forward and does get taken down, but a blink forward aggressively from SoS, realizing he's got a shot here. He rolls into Banelings, however, and the Roach Ravager is starting to demolish all of the Stalkers. That blink forward might have been a little too over-aggressive as the Immortal also gets taken down. Another blink forward from SoS, but soO no longer with those Banelings to help out. Now down to his last few units. Needs these reinforcements to pop out desperately. SoS, I don't know if he's actually going to do it. I mean, he's blinking quite aggressively, and that cost him so many Stalkers, and now the Lings, with their own +1 melee, almost on +2, there it is, right there, are going to be able to surround the Stalkers. That one Colossus was really the only thing that would melt the Lings off of a Stalker presence, but it was too vulnerable. He had to pick it up. It's still not quite over, I would say. The micro-ability of Stalkers, not to be underestimated. SoS just kind of made them not look like they're very microable because he blinked offensively, which I kind of got, to be fair. I'm not saying that was a total miscall. I kind of understood it, but it was overly ambitious. But once they are used more reflexively, right, blinking backwards as soon as one is injured, they do have the ability to overwhelm, to just trade out more efficiently. Especially if soO is having a larva problem, which he absolutely is having. However, the army might be big enough for soO just to easily take this on, and that is actually the case. That is going to be it. GG. soO. What a roller coaster. What a roller coaster. That was 14 minutes, of which I believe the first 6 really determined the outcome. But then there was a couple of there was just a little bit of awkwardness around around the whole game. But soO, I believe, was kind of supposed to win that off the back of that Resident Glaive defense. And SoS just kind of messing it up. So the Stars align once again. The world is at peace. Everything's copacetic, and we move on to game 2 to see who qualifies here in the GSL. Game number 2 is going to be on Gressfon. In the top left, it is Team NV's SoS, and in the bottom right, it is soO, he has his clan is the Kwandong one, but I don't know if he's actually on that team anymore. I would suspect so, because they're actually using totally new accounts. So if they added a clan, that would have been very purposeful. Yeah, Kwandong Freaks. Okay. Just confirming, wasn't quite sure. My Hangul learning once again coming in to almost good effect. And soO going for a 15 hatch into a 15 pool. Okay, so a double extractor trick, actually. Just one after another, not both at the same time. And this has made its rounds. It didn't seem to really stay, I suppose. But I have been casting far more PvT in TVT than Zergs, actually. With the off-season being full of European Open Cups. How many Zergs are in those? But anyway. So, was that a 15? Did he actually wait till the 16? Should have been 15 as well. Anyway, SoS not going to be able to get a block in the hatchery when you do this. Not at all. And so the Zerg players can breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief. None of that lost mining time, none of that obnoxiousness, and if SoS was once again going into Resident Enclaves, definitely less awkward at to pull those drones. Main to natural. So, is SoS going to go Resident Enclaves again? I kind of hope he doesn't. That wasn't the best use of Adepts that I've ever seen. That Warp Prism flying through the main base to join up with the natural Adepts was just... I mean, too big of a mistake from a pro, is the harsh truth of it. We definitely understand mistakes in StarCraft 2 and forced errors as well in the heat of battle, in the midst of all these actions per minute. But that was pretty egregious. That was something that if you had been practicing your Resident Enclave build with the Warp Prism over and over and over again, I don't think you would make that mistake immediately after. It felt like one of those mistakes made because you did used to practice it a lot, and then you brought it back out again, and then didn't really think about that. Or it could just be, you know, simple human error, and he actually had practiced it 50 times leading up to this qualifier, and then that was just the one time out of 50 that he made such a mistake, and that's very unfortunate. All the other Zerg players didn't bring their queens to the main, or didn't have as many queens, or, you know, the pattern of the Adept Shades wasn't what he practiced, or what have you, I don't know. But it really did contribute to a great loss, because that Warp Prism dying wasn't just the end of the Adept attack itself, which was already kind of ending, but it also was the end of a lot of harassment. So you could pick up 4 Adepts, and you could still at least try and continue harassment. You obviously bring that back, and that's what picks up the Disruptor, as opposed to having to make another Warp Prism, delaying the Robo production, and 275 minerals down the drain. Yeah. It's pretty crucial, I would say, to the whole idea, of course, of the attack, but then also to the, alright, well, I can still do something. I can still say I have a presence here. When you lose it, you have 0 presence. You didn't have to harp on it too much. Oh, we do have double gases coming down for SoS before that third Nexus, opening up with a Void Ray and a Stargate. I do believe we'll be seeing some shenanigans from SoS. soO not gonna be able to get any easy scouting since the Void Ray is out, blocking out any Overlords. Shenanigans afoot. Double Stargate, Fleet Beacon on the way. Now this is something that will be increasingly more obvious, especially to people who have played against this recently. And this is something that Hero does as well, although I would say more often around transitioning from something, but you can go directly into it. If you are facing someone who doesn't expect this, they're thinking of a million other possibilities of a 2-base Protoss, and it's only at the point in which the carriers arrive on the front lines that they understand, oh, it's carriers. It can win instantly. 2 carriers arrive when 2 or 3 queens are out and about doing whatever they want to do, and they get taken down. Then there's only 2 or 3 queens left over after that, and they get taken down. You actually have 0 anti-air. The carriers just win. But soO should be very much on guard against something weird. No third Nexus at this time is incredibly weird. Can't get the scout on the gases, which would be the most telling thing. Shouldn't get the gas scout. And is just gonna have to wait to see the carriers. SoS will be moving out probably as soon as they pop, or maybe as soon as they have full interceptor count. And it's a question of whether or not soO can get that scout. He has 7 queens, which is pretty good. He's building into Ling Baneling with +1 melee on the way. Lair is on the way, which he is going to need a Spire eventually. It's really about the first wave. I mean, Lings are still scouting around for any type of information. They see a very low number of units. It's possible a bunch of units are being stacked up in the main or the natural, and you just can't scout them, though. So this is still not totally damning. And the carriers have just popped 2 more on the way. These things have not been scouted at all. I miss them myself, but I mean, the Lings definitely have not scouted them. They're going to go for an attack on the 3rd base. The Adepts get into quite the crafty area, which probably means they'll be effective enough. And most importantly, these carriers are just totally unseen. A couple more queens are on the way, so I think soO has been figuring them out. But the fact is, he did not bundle his queens together. So he doesn't have them all, which means that these will fall one at a time. A couple of transfuses will help, and now here come the rest of the queens. Perhaps soO can still make this last-second defense happen. Highest energy queen does go down, but the carrier also starting to get hit here. And its whole health taken care of. And forced to disengage from the battle entirely. That was a bit sketch. soO only having so many queens available at once is the sketchiest way to start this defense. But now that all the queens are here, I do believe the carriers will not snowball in such a fashion, and they are forced to disengage entirely, both at about half health. So good job, queens. Spire starts, obviously, as soon as soO can think about it. Meanwhile, SoS has been trying to safeguard this 3rd Nexus. Trying. But failing. Well, not failing, but trying, but putting a lot of resources into it. I suppose 6 Adepts of 37 Lings. Actually, I mean, Lings are also a factor, right? And they've all gone down, so there's really no threat further on the Nexus. And nothing to defend the building Adept count. Resonant Glaives after the carriers. Very unique choice, but one that might work here. soO has not stopped the snowball of the 4 carriers showing up. 2 carriers he dealt with, 4 not so much. That Spire still not done, and now in sight of the carriers, interceptors. That could be the next thing to fall, actually. And either way, SoS might be winning the game through the air or through the ground. soO acknowledges it and will tap out. At the end of the day, not realizing what it was and getting that Spire just ever so late. And not having a very good ground army either meant that, as I said, the Adepts would either show up or the carriers would continue to dominate. So SoS with the tricky double Stargate build will win outs for game number 2. Let's head into the final match. All tied up now, going into Royal Blood. In the top right, it is Team NV's SoS. And for the Freaks, it is soO. And he is going to go for another extractor trick opener. Early hatch, early pool. Not able to stop the snowball at the end of the day, actually. I was mostly worried for the 2 carriers, of course. But then when that got halted, I was feeling a bit better for soO, but that Spire was, end of the day, just too late. I don't believe it was made as soon as the lair finished. It was made as the chaos erupted and the interceptors flew out, I think. And then that 20, 30-second difference or whatever it was enough to end the game. Even if the Corruptors had been popping out, however, they would have, had to pop out altogether. If they were popping out individually because the carriers were on the hatcheries already, then it's probably still game over. But say they are fast enough to do that. Then the second problem was that soO had just lost any amount of ground army that he had, and he was realizing there was a growing number of Adepts. He realized those were on the way. So he would have lost then as well. It was really just a problem of being pushed off kilter initially by a rather surprising double carrier. Again, there's so many things you gotta think of when you watch the Protoss do weird shit that you're not really able to line up everything perfectly because you don't know for sure. So you get pushed off kilter, and then if the follow-up is fast enough, you never get to regain your balance. And soO never regained his balance. He might have been able to push back, force SoS off kilter too, if those lings had actually done something to the third nexus, but they didn't. SoS able to warp in an extra 2 adepts right in time, and to get 4 tucked into the mineral line, started trading out effectively against the lings. And then even though he was still in a very low gateway count, apparently 2 adepts at a time was enough to stop soO's little ling flood, very little attempt to stall up that third nexus. So that's something that soO now knows about, and as soon as he sees that 2-base opener once again, he will be far more suspicious and far more prepared. But this means that SoS can also play off of another type of 2-base situation, which is one that doesn't involve carriers and gas. He could go into 2-base resident glaives again, which, even though he set up this kind of trend of predictions to throw off soO, I was really not impressed with his adept micro. If it sounds like I'm being a little too harsh, I guess I am, but yeah. Anywho, it's another Twilight Council, so I guess it will be. And yeah, it's just the execution on the adepts doesn't seem great. The best of 3 setup might be spectacular. It makes a lot of sense. Because now soO is just like, I have no idea what you're doing if you're stuck on 2 bases. But I'm really worried about the Resident Glaives micro. Oh boy. Alright, so soO gets his 3rd base down. Everything looks according to plan here for the Zerg player, and it's just a matter of scouting what the hell SoS is doing. There's really 2 choices. I mean, technically there's like a charge all in. There's even, some people still bring out like a 2-base blink attack, which is really rare nowadays. Generally, we're going about 2-base setup, Resident Glaives being most of the 2-base setups, now with that tricky Stargate thing thrown in there. So I'm going to say that's basically the 50-50 choice that soO has to make here, even though there are some other factors to consider. And there's really an equal chance on both, I would say, because that last one won the game. SoS could be feeling like that's actually the ticket, or because soO is now most paranoid of that because it won the game, changing it up to adepts is the best way to do it. Something that soO's gonna have to determine. No Overlord this time, Overlord Killer this time, sorry, Void Ray, right? It's right into Resident Glaives with the Warp Prism on the way. So the Overlord could actually see the gas count, and this would have been really great to see even earlier, but it's still seeing it before Resident Glaives is actually done. The Warp Prism still has not to be scouted, actually, as the Adepts went forward, chasing down any Ling presence, but the Overlord scouting a 2-base setup without the natural gases is enough information for soO, who has stopped on about the same drone count you would want to defend against this, 43. Maybe other people's do start out 41, but it's around that number, basically, and is now pumping out as many Lings as possible. Also slapped down the Roachborn, again, a little bit late. Perhaps had they gotten that Overlord scout a slight bit faster, this would be perfectly timed, but Queens and Lings will have to do the trick, and they might be able to for the first wave. The question is the second and third one, and especially if the Adepts get into every nook and cranny of soO's bases. That's the real rub. SoS so far not doing any damage to the economy, soO not even forced to pull the drones so far. soO a little low on the gas, so his problem right now is building the roaches. And he's also going to start running low on injects as he pulls the queens to and fro. But SoS is not forcing any opportunity. And even shading back means that he's, a simple drone pull away from the 3rd base should do the trick. A little late, so 2 drones went down, but you can see that there is no Adepts going forward. They must be going backward. This must be a retreat thing. And if they'd stayed around, well, then the roaches would have dealt with them. There's no way they kill the hatchery in time, right? So that was a very easy call for soO to make. SoS, not making this as tricky as possible, is starting to run out of time for it to actually be good. soO also realizing that is like, okay, I guess, and starts building drones, which I think is very appropriate. He has enough army to chase around the Adepts, and now it's a little bit more of an issue of catching the sneaky Adepts, such as the ones in the Warp Prism. Something I was describing could have happened in Game 1 if the Warp Prism hadn't died. But even though it increases the potential of finding a couple of more drones, obviously it's not happening. SoS's Adept attack so far, subpar. Not even mediocre, it's subpar. Because some argument could be made as like, well, you're setting up for the follow-up anyway, so you know, it's a good thing he saved all of his adepts and didn't try and force the issue. I mean, they really did interrupt soO. There's definitely a macro interruption as we now see that gas problem highlighted even more than before. But still, overall, I would say this was not enough of a disruption. And SoS, should he plan on actually doing a real follow-up all-in, should be tracked. And I do believe he is, by the way. He's getting a third Nexus, but that won't have very many probes for a while. So the Lings are scouting the massive amount of depths. You know they're going to use them at some point, whether it's with the Disruptors or not, or Immortals, or whatever it is. And that is a lot of Adepts, holy crap. If you don't sacrifice them, you get a lot of them. 26 Adepts and 2 Disruptors. Will it be enough to just break through Roaches? No Ravagers, and only a handful of Queens? Maybe. Spinecrawler gets taken down, Adept Shade into the main base. Drones will have to be pulled here. Not so far. And pulled into the Extractor is not going to help that much. Yeah, many drones are going to fall. Here we go. The count's starting to rise a little bit more. Adept Shades will not go through. And they will stay in the main base, which I understand why. The army was over on that bottom third base location. Lings were returning home after an unsuccessful break into the natural. But then they weren't threatening anything anymore. Recall happens, but only on a partial number of the Adepts, which definitely wasn't purposeful. That might have been the full extent of the recall, to be fair, but the Adepts not even getting a last-second shade to try and further cause chaos or buy time, because you do need to worry about the Zerg now counterattacking. Even if you did a tremendous amount of drone damage, which I wouldn't call this tremendous, you would still have to worry about living yourself. You just traded out your army for their economy. Classic scenario right here. But it looks like soO is not going to bother going for the all-in. He doesn't really have to. It's not a desperate situation. And with the size of the map and his lack of Ravagers, he'd have to wait for those and then go across. And there's very possible the Disruptors would be chasing him. So, as I said, maybe if it was a desperate... Oh my god, that was a good Disruptor shot. Woo! Oh, that was so many Roaches. I don't know how many, but that was a lot. That's a lot of blood right there. Good job on the Disruptors. One did die. For the greater good, I suppose. But, yeah, okay. What was I saying? If it was desperate, soO might have gone for it. But it's not desperate. As I said, I don't think that was actually a lot of damage for the Adepts to do to soO's economy, considering that SoS had also hurt his economy to do it in the first place. Only now saturating his third base, still no additional gases. Gonna look for the follow-up with a couple of Colossus. And soO, once again, with Lings on the field, not just looking for run-by opportunities, but also looking to scout something like this, to know what exactly the game is going, which, you know, the first game of this series was really, it felt like they were partially blind. Like there was some more like groping with your hands to try and figure something out rather than actually using your eyes. Not to be too harsh. It was a little off from both parties. You know, again, the ebb and flow was a little off in a really clean, I suppose, immaculate Zerg versus Protoss. And this time around, basically, I think it's up to soO, again, because I also favored him in the first game. I think it's up to him to just be able to actually see what's going on here. So Changeling just scouted the army movements, however, did not get into the third base to see that, in fact, it is saturated, it is getting gases, and that it might not be fully dedicated to an attack, but it is an attack. So as long as he gets that idea down, that he is about to be attacked, he should be able to build up quite the army. No upgrades on it yet, however, is a bit concerning, but there's no upgrades on the Protoss army either. The Lings going for gold. Do not often take down a Colossus by themselves, but they did try. And that Colossus didn't fall, unfortunately, but it is in the red. soO prepared for this, has Roaches, Ravagers, no Baneling speed, no +1 melee. But is going to try and at least stall out here on the ramp, dodge away from the Disruptor. Oh, and the Corrosive Biles did take out that very injured Colossus. Mistake there from SoS, because that could have lived for a very long time. Absolutely. More Banelings being formed to try and clear out the front line Adepts in particular. Upgrades for soO drawing ever closer. Just a couple of more seconds. There's the Baneling speed finishing up here. He's going to actually push forward quite aggressively. Not able to make anything happen through the choke, though. 2 Colossus beams, still something to really worry about. Now +1 melee is also done. Disruptor, again, not getting any particularly good shot. The stand must be made here. SOS's supply not looking particularly strong. Down 50 army. Can still work out for the Protoss, but in a very ideal scenario. One that would probably be with Blink Stalkers, and Blink is not done. So many of those frontline ones getting injured are actually falling as opposed to being microed away. Blink maybe 20 seconds away for the Protoss, but soO just continuing to build up over and over and over again, trading out as he sees fit, now even feeling so confident as to actually burst down that ramp and chase after the Protoss army a little bit. But as long as he can remax behind it, then it's all Gucci. A little bit of a supply block for soO is a bit hurtful, but SoS isn't making as much headway as he would like, even as Blink finishes up. I question his ability to win here right now. And he's all in. He's not trying to build any type of fourth base, not even rebuild. He's not trying to build any fourth base. He's about to lose all of his probes at his third. Familiar scenario indeed. They had already lost a few apparently, so it's just the rest going down. And SoS has no chance here. I would say basically no chance. soO is once again a little gas-starved, but Lings at a certain point are also going to be helpful, especially if the Colossus do end up falling. They in fact be perfect against the remaining Blink Stalkers. Who are still upgradeless, by the way. I mean, at least they have Blink, but no +1. soO has played this out as cautiously as one should, by the way. If in some of the earlier battles he had decided to pull the trigger and go down the ramp out of frustration, he probably would be dead, actually. But choosing to go back and forth, rebuild, and play out the longer game that he knows he will win is working out really well for him. It is. Gas goes down, but while that has been an issue for soO, he does have a fourth base in which he could take the gases should he need it. He also has reinforcements over there that aren't being rallied. I guess he didn't hotkey. Wait, no, that doesn't make any sense. I guess he hasn't re-rallied since building the hatchery. Not sure what's happening there, but the Banelings are rolling all in, and they are going to be able to capture those Colossus. Are they actually going to be able to get the kill? Not so much. They go for the heart of the army overall. One Colossus does indeed fall down. Now with only one able to utilize its range for the damage, that might not be enough to burst through the Roach Ravager. Still very helpful when it comes to dealing with the Lings, no doubt about that. And this battle is not quite yet over. It's been about 2 minutes, but it's not quite over. SoS, though, half the supply of his opponent now, is going to lose potentially his last Colossus. And, well, if he doesn't lose that, he's going to lose all of his Stalkers anyway. soO has just been able to rebuild so often. Had he been cut earlier in the drones, had there been any amount of harassment while this went on, this might have been a different story as well. But Disruptor goes down. The last two Stalkers being warped in as reinforcements are going into a losing battle. And relying on one single Colossus against an almost maxed out Zerg army is not going to work out. GG's. soO will advance on to GSL Season 3 2023 in the lower bracket of the first round. That's a nice result for soO. And he was again joined by Solar, who SoS was also unable to take down. So SoS denied entry into the GSL twice here at the almost finish line. He does have round 2 to try and hold on. Let's see if he can actually make it through. That's going to be it for this GSL qualifier. I might have 1 or 2 more to actually show you guys that I think might be interesting. But as always, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. And I'll see you for more StarCraft 2 very soon.